And hi, everyone. It is November the 1st, and I wanted to share a video on something that until I started writing the hockey book, I had no idea existed. And that is hockey cards prior, but possibly and probably prior to 1900. Now, I had known about cigarette cards that existed around 1910, 1911. But cards such as this one, which became the cover of my book, and this is from Sibyl's meat extract company. It became the cover of my book. You can see it's a beautiful card. Thankfully, it's in beautiful shape as well. I picked this up when I'll talk about this. But I want to talk about these cards, and I'll put some of them up as we go along because they're a very interesting piece of chapter 3 of the new book, which is trying to get an understanding of when this supposed new form of hockey, supposedly starting in 1875 in Montreal, reaches Europe. And so these very early cards become a very interesting, we'll call it a very interesting piece of information as to when and where they're going to occur. So I'm going to put a few of them up, but there are some very early cards. Now we have problems in that it's almost impossible to completely date the card. Like the card I just showed you, this one here. It was listed as being an 1885 card, but I don't think it's from 1885. A Sibyl's card expert, they made thousands of these cards actually. Not of this particular one. This is actually a German. I'll talk about this in a moment. Exactly what these cards are. But one of the first cards that came into the listing point is this one here, and it's a Buford card, and it is listed to be 1880. It does seem to be probably quite accurate. Buford Litho 1880 card, and this card, as you can see, has a boy with a stick and a ball, so very much what you would think of as field hockey, but being played. But he has no skates. It's just there's snow around him. So it's being listed as it's being listed as some sort of winter card just because there's obviously snow there, but it's he doesn't have skates of any kind. That led to a couple of other cards. These have been seemingly listed to the 1880s, and you have to remember what these cards are. They're cards that were put out by companies as advertising items. So like the card I showed you here, if you look at the back of the card, it's all information on the meat extract, which meat extract is something you would add to soups. We would think of it today as a bouillon to bring a meat taste to your soup. And so the card is meant to be like an advertising piece so that somebody would collect the front of the card, but then when they'd read the back, they would have the information on the company. So that's what all of these cards were at the time. They were like advertising supplements. The next one here is this one, and it's for advertising for a roller skating rink, commemorating Monday evening, April 24th, and ending Saturday, April 29th. We don't have a date on the card. Of course, you could figure out from the times when the 24th is a Monday and the 29th is a Saturday, you could pick certain years, but again, we have no idea. But we do notice that it's not, even though it's advertising for a roller skating rink, it's not roller skating because you can see it's quite obvious that the skates have blades on them. But once again, we're seeing sort of a more standard field hockey type look of the very short club-like sticks and a ball on the ice. Much of what you are supposed to expect from the 1880s. Now we have another card. This is also, I think, this is a Great Atlantic Pacific and Tea Company card. This one again is listed to the 1880s, and again has very much a look of what you would expect of a card at that time. And you can see again, though, it's definitely a ball, and it's definitely curved sticks. I find these things interesting because, like I say, I had no idea that these cards existed. And I'm just going to read you a bit from chapter 3. as we go through it. As I discuss it, I'll show the cards as we go along. Um, so I've talked about these. The next one comes from the Diamantine Shoeshine Company in Germany. And again, these were advertising cards of the company. The front of the card, we have what would be the standard look of hockey in the 1880s. Played with a ball, although the sticks are much longer than the standard bandy hurley stick. So this was one I found very interesting. This card is listed as 1879. And we'll talk about the problem with that in a moment. But first of all, it's the German word ice hockey appears on the front of the card, and the back gives a very unique description. So there's the back of the card, and I'll read a translation of it for you. Winter sport for ice hockey. Hockey is similar to soccer and is usually played on a grass field. In winter, however, the interesting sport is moved to the bare ice surface. It requires great skill so that the players don't trip each other up or damage each other with long bats. If a goal is won, meaning a goal scored, then of course there is some enthusiasm as in a soccer game. Reckless behavior, the so-called lumbering, cannot be tolerated in this sport under any circumstances. Some try to date the card to 1879, which I feel is incorrect because there is an 1879 date on the card that you can see when you look at it. There, it's under just above the line that goes across the middle of the card to the right, and it's under the abbreviation GEGR. Now, what that is, it's a short form for the German word gegründet, which means founded in English. So the date on the back of the card is the founding date for the company, not necessarily anything for the card itself. So all we would know is that the card has to be after 1879. I can't imagine they would found the company and immediately put out a card. So the earliest the card could be is 1880, but you'd have to assume it's a little bit later than that. But given the look of the players, again, on the front of the card, this is very much what you would expect of something pre-1900. What I found interesting about the card is the drawings of the players on it look very French-like. This is if you were thinking about almost like French musketeer look, that's what this would look like. Yet, it's a card that was supposed to be going into Germany. And Diamantine is a shoeshine product. So, was this also a French card that they just put German on top of it, as we'll see happen, or was that card specifically for Germany? And if so, why would they want to have French-looking players? There's a second card that also gets listed as the 1880s, and I definitely doubt this particular card as being from that area. It's also from the Diamantine Company, as you can see. Again, we've got the short bandy-like sticks. We've got the ball. They are on ice. They are on skates, but there is a problem that this card is probably not from the 1880s, and I'll see if anybody can spot it. That would be the goal net to the left of the card, because nets were not supposed to have been added to posts on the ice in Canada until the late 1890s. I think 1890 and 91 is the first listing of a goal net being used at now the University of Connecticut. And Spalding new cage goal nets weren't started until 1895. I haven't been able to find an image of one of them, but we didn't really start to see them in full use until 1899, 1900. So for me, because the net's in there, the earliest the card could be is 1895. More likely you're seeing this card as maybe the early 1900s. But again, early 1900s, we still have a look of bandy on the ice. Pretty much. That's pretty much what you're seeing, a bandy hurley looking card. Then we come to the card here that I have in my book. And this becomes a very unique that I have in my possession. This is a very unique card now for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's actually a French card. There are 4 versions of the card available in French that say La Jeu de Hockey, but this one is of course Das Hockeyspiel, so it's a German card. And there are only 2 German cards in existence. I think there's 4 French cards in existence. the date of the card becomes very, very important. And the reason for that is because the card is very unique because that is obviously not a ball. They are using a wooden disc, a puck. Now, in all the other cards, as we've seen, there's no puck. It's always a ball. So the fact that this card has a puck in it is a very, very important marker point that something has changed in the card. You also notice as well, I'll put up again, that there are two large posts put in the ice to be a goal. It's not a net, it's two large posts. And again, this is the similarity of what you were seeing in very early indoor hockey games in Canada, the two posts frozen in the ice. So in a sense, what you're seeing is you're seeing Montreal hockey. You're seeing what I'm calling the appropriated native game being packaged in Canada. This is it. This is the package game, and it's now being put on cards in Europe, which means this now has to be something that the company feels the people in Europe would know what it is, that they would know what this sport is. That's very important because there's lots of these Sybils cards, and they have them all over the world. So in Russia, they would have images of like a Russian postman delivering post to somebody. If they have something in Italy, there's things that are very normal to Italians. So if this is going out to French and German people in France and Germany, they'd have to think that they fully understand what's going on the ice, that they wouldn't have to be wondering, where's the ball? They know that there's a sport being played on ice with poles, with longer, and you can see the longer sticks as well. And they kind of have more modern hockey stick-like appearance. They're not the normal bandy hooked sticks that we've been used to. So the card becomes unbelievably important to date. Now, I said perhaps somebody from the Sybils company French company, traveled to the Montreal Winter Carnival in the early 1880s and saw the hockey being played there and drew it and sketched it out, and they put it on a card, and he was promoting this new sport in Montreal. That's possible. But again, he had to feel, or the company had to feel, that the people seeing the card would understand what was going on. And that's why the dating of the card is so important. Really, really important. Because it will tell us when this style of hockey reaches Europe. Now, something very, very strange, though, about the company Sybils. If you start doing an internet search on them, and I mean, this company they made hundreds of these cards, like literally hundreds of the cards, of the various trade cards. But if you search the internet, you'll find information on Sybils trade cards. From that, you can buy them, purchase them, and who has. But on the company, almost zero information exists. Every company, particularly a company that's in the collectibles game, you would think would be there, but literally, it's just non-existent. There's information on another famous meat extract company, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It starts with an L. Liebig, right. And Liebig began producing cards in 1872. So I don't know if Sybils is a subsidiary of the Liebig company. So it's kind of like, a secondary franchise, and they changed the name of it because Liebig was from, I think it was from Belgium. I think is where that company originated, Belgium or Holland. And so maybe Sybils was just a subsidiary, so that's why there isn't much information on the internet on it as opposed to this Liebig company. But it's very strange, though, that for a company with hundreds of cards available for purchase, that there is almost no information about it on the internet. I find that anytime you look for something historical on the internet and there's absolutely no information on it, red flag. So anyway, that's why it's important. Now, the rest of the chapter, for those who hopefully you'd be interested in buying the book from this and going into more detail. From there, I go into a couple of photographs that were taken definitely taken in the 1890s in St. Moritz, Switzerland, by a woman named Lizzie LeBlond, who is a sort of like a famous female mountaineering outdoor elite person who moved to St. Moritz with a number of well-known people from England, as well as a very interesting person from Halifax, Nova Scotia. linked to a number of people in the story. And she has taken photographs of obvious hockey games being played. The early ones are very much bandy-like. The photos are terrific, very bandy-like. But then all of a sudden, some photos come which look much more like the Montreal style hockey, and those games are. And she's very clear on the dating of her photographs from December 1896. So by 1896, we have a Montreal style game ish, we're calling Montreal style hockey, showing up in Europe, which could put these cards definitely into making it a pre 1900 card. But if this card could ever truly be dated to, I've tried to find exactly why some of these places date this card to 1885, because there's no date on it. I mean, there's the back. There's nothing that indicates a date anywhere on this card. But some have dated the card to 1885. No one's been able to explain specifically why that has been dated to that. But if for some reason that turns out to be an 1885 card, it's starting to make me question again, it's questioning this narrative of hockey. And that's why the hockey cards are so interesting. There's a few others out there. I didn't put them all up. There's a few other winter-like pre-1900 hockey cards. But I just found for me, it was just such a unique thing, because if we could ever find the correct date on that Sybil's card specifically, we would uncover some information on the history of the movement of hockey. Either because again, I'm saying that one of the key things of this book is that hockey wasn't invented in Canada, and hockey didn't grow out of British pastimes from field and ice games in England, like the standard presentation. That this was a planned operation, and probably this either came from the natives directly, or it was a native sport that went very, very early to Europe, modified itself in Europe for a long, long time, and was brought back and again merged more with the native stick and ball ice games, and was repackaged as to what it started to become in the 1870s and the 1880s. Again, like everything, the story of 1800s history is just so strange once you begin digging into it. And so I wanted to share this piece on the hockey cards with you. And yeah, if you have questions or comments, or if you know something about the cards, please let us know. We'd all be curious. Cheers.